AI's use in music is one that is already here and used in everyday musical situations, from Isotope's Neutron, Shazam's audio identification app, Lander's mastering service, RipX's stems extraction tool, and Spotify's music recommendation algorithm. These are just a few, but all can be thought of as AI or machine learning tools addressing either a task or a subtask. This assistant tool-based approach can be extended into other areas, such as harmony, melody, bass lines, and drum patterns, and a variety of working contexts offered by Google's Magenta suite of tools. Google provides plugins based around specific sets of functions, such as generating ideas from scratch, continuing ideas, or interpolating them with others. Researcher observations of human teams using AI tools have identified 3 common challenges, and I quote, AI was not easily decomposable, was not context-aware, not easily steerable. When using these AI tools, it was observed that many musicians tended to adopt a generate then curate approach. There are also AI composition software available, generally using sets of keywords or style identifiers. This type of software differs from the tool-based approach in that it can be described as a monolithic end-to-end model, ultimately with the aim to generate a complete piece with little interaction. Software such as Ava already occupy this position, offering fully formed compositions, but that still require some human organization to finish. It should also be understood that not only is Ava a composition competitor, but also that companies such as Spotify and other digital service providers are also making incursions into this space, which Montreal refers to as commercial AIM. Now, commercial AIM stands for Commercial Artificial Intelligent Music. So commercial AIM as a subset of AIM that includes industry-driven innovations aimed at commodifying AI music. In all of these, we can also detect the forging of a relationship between humans and machines. Suzanne Ciani said that she was in love with this machine when talking about her Buchla synthesizer. And I quote, "I thought it was alive. I had a relationship with it. I once took this training in New York because I had an agent for Buchla concerts who wanted me to. So I did the training. And my issue was, I was in love with my machine. And at the end of the training, my realization was that people are just machines." Ciani's love for the machine can be contrasted with Anthony Jackson's comments in 1992.
The machines are here.
Uh-oh. You mean they've got bass, not only drum machines, but they got bass?
They were the first. I'm old-fashioned and very idealistic about that. My feeling is I'll outplay anybody using the machine, or I'll die.
Donna Haraway would suggest that we have been forging these sorts of relationships with machines, as well as others such as animals, for a very long time. She notes that the cyborg is often referred to as being a confusion of boundaries. But far from the accounts of technological determinism destroying man by the machine, she views this as one that could be potentially radical in nature for humans and machines. The composer David Cope devised his AI, called Emmy, which is Experiments in Musical Intelligence, as a means to assist him in completing work where he was experiencing an artistic block. In particular, he was working on an opera, and whilst it took a few years to build the AI, the opera took approximately 2 days to complete once the AI was live. During the process of building and refining his AI, an important aspect was revealed to him. He realized that he did not understand what his style was. Thus, the AI assisted him in identifying and refining this aspect of his compositional craft. Even though Hofstaeder noted that Cope's Emmy doesn't generate style on its own, it depends on mimicking prior composers, something in common with all AI. Emmy also assisted Cope in better understanding his style, an unlooked-for side effect, thereby implying an improvement in the quality of Cope's human works. Ava is an AI tool that composes music based upon a number of well-established preset styles and parameters. Cook refers to style-based writing, especially in respect of adverts, as a postmodernist approach with a discernible musical logic. Ava, as an example of this discernible logic, is presented as a composer of emotional soundtracks. It is not an unsupervised AI, so the music examples composed by the AI are also organized and/or arranged by humans. This is very much in line with Cope's AI, that is, working together, and Haraway's view of one potential development of the cyborg relationship. So if you're watching this on YouTube, now is a good time to click the link in the description below. So in 2017, Ava was acknowledged by Sasam as a standalone composer and in Google searches is referred to as a musical artist. Yet Sasam's endorsement is at odds with ideas of who an individual is. The US Copyright Board's position is that unsupervised AI works cannot obtain copyright protection as, and I quote, US copyright law only protects the fruits of intellectual labour that are founded in the creative powers of the human mind. Put more straightforwardly, Judge Leonard P. Stark stated that there is no ambiguity. The Patent Act requires that inventors must be natural persons, that is, human beings. So all of these patents and IP challenges challenge the new way they produce a new issue so that it becomes more about who did the inventing rather than what was invented. Many countries and organisations such as the World Trade Organization are currently reviewing their positions on this matter. In the UK, so as to incentivise companies to base operations in the UK, IP laws are under consideration for amendment of AI-derived works. One of the stumbling blocks is defining originality in computer-generated works. And I quote, "The illogicality of the current legal requirement that a computer-generated work must be original if it is to receive copyright protection." The concept of originality is defined by reference to human authors, assessed against characteristics which include the judgment, skill, and personality put into the work. This begs the question of how this can be assessed in relation to a work created by a machine. Using Ava could be a liberating experience, perhaps even similar to Cope's, until one considers the conditions of creating music using this software. Under the free and standard plan, Ava owns the copyright on all tracks created by a user. Whilst Nadi highlights the retention of moral rights in work for hire, with Ava there is no suggestion that a user has any right at all, unless they pay at the pro level. Cope's AI Emmy and Ava differ in several key areas. Firstly, Cope created his own AI. He trained it, identified the models, refined the datasets, fine-tuned the outputs, all based upon a high degree of skill, sensitivity, and need. In this way, Cope can be said to own the means of production and, for Cope at least, his AI did not appear as a black box. In contrast, Ava offers the facility to upload a track style to be modelled, but if this were your own sketch, then Ava would own the result unless you were on the Pro plan. Ava exists within a set of capitalist AI practices that can be referred to as algorithmic rents. As well as long-term enrichment via these algorithmic rents, there is also surplus value generated by Ava's users who also improve the AI's learning by using the software. Thus, users of the system are, to some extent, a disenfranchised creative class, more like an unwaged worker than an autonomous creative, which includes paying for the privilege to use the software and therefore operating as a hidden part of this economy. In this section, I consider library music as part of an on-demand, personalised service, perhaps curated by AI, and potential differences when contrasted with library music as a form of cultural circulation. Durand notes strong associations between instrumental sonorities and keywords that through repetition and association become perceived as a cliché. This typing of music by exploiting well-established tropes or broadly communicative semiotic cues which tell the viewer what to think or feel are what McInnes and Park describe as a message-relevant executional cue. Since their inception, music libraries have operated in this space by offering music that is specific enough to represent the required attributes and yet not so specific as to limit its potential uses. As Donnelly points out, editing library music might well be performed by non-trained musicians or even non-musicians. And Nardi highlights that the sender of the message is not the musician, but the user of the library. But what happens when AI makes these decisions? And what type of cultural communication can be understood to be taking place? What, in effect, is the message? AI video technology such as Myriad can deploy on-demand advertising in pre-existing videos based upon a user's personal data. As well as adverts that are integrated into the video, music could also be tailored to fit this on-demand requirement. Whilst audiences have become used to what is termed George Lucasing, the potential problem here is that no viewing experience will be quite the same. Whilst we may watch the same titled film or TV show, it may come with different ambient accompaniments and underbeds. Therefore, different music could be deployed to different viewers as an aspect of personalization, mood, or age, similar in operation perhaps to Google's AdWords. There could also be a situation where music libraries are tied to different AI video services, thereby increasing opportunity for placement, but reducing use outside the system. The issue for existing library music suggests that in this situation, AI will be determining the best fit in musical terms based upon matching sets of tags against user behavior and preferences. This situation suggests an expansion of library sources rather than a diminishment, but also implies that the use cost will be driven down, as has happened with music streaming revenue, perhaps even subject to periodic rate cuts as per Spotify. So as much as there might be a certain tailoring of music for visuals based on individual user preferences, issues can also be illustrated via an opposite use case scenario in respect of how music circulates as culture. The Sweeney, Euston Films 1975 to 78, used more than 350 pieces of library music over its 4-season run. The pieces were mainly drawn from established UK library music houses such as KPM, De Wolfe, Bruton and Themes International. One cue by the composer Alan Tew, titled The Big One, is worth considering to illustrate this idea of cultural circulation and reuse. The cue was included on the Themes International release titled Drama Suite Part 1, catalogue number TIM 1024, released in 1976. So if you're watching this on YouTube, now is a good time to click the link in the description below. So The Big One was featured twice during the Sweeney's 4th season in 2 different episodes. The Big One also bears close kinship with other themes written by Tew, such as Yorkshire Television's The Hanged Man from 1975. So if you're watching this on YouTube, now is a good time to click the link in the description below. Also some close similarities with the 1977 TV action crime drama The Professionals, composed by Laurie Johnson. So if you're watching this on YouTube, now is a good time to click the link in the description below. And one can also detect the trace of earlier influential songs such as Papa Was a Rolling Stone by The Temptations, released in 1972. So if you're watching this on YouTube, now is a good time to click the link in the description below. Yet The Big One also had a utility beyond this and became the theme tune for the US reality court TV show, The People's Court. This use leads to more cultural exposure, with the track later being sampled 6 times, 3 of which were by hip-hop artists, Jay-Z, Nelly, and Snoop Dogg. More recently, Tew's cues, taken from the Drama Suite releases parts 1 and 2, along with other library music from that time, were used to provide the more authentic 70s cop show underbed for the film Black Dynamite, released in 2009. The brief life story of this single cue highlights an issue that AI might not be able to resolve if the goal is one of personalization and the neoliberal destination of the individual. The reuse and subsequent adaptations of this example cue posed the question whether AI would reuse and adapt its own existing music similarly so, especially as it might take as much time to generate a new track as vary a pre-existing one. Or would this be another job for the human co-creator, who will identify specific works for reuse, reproduction, or adaptation, therefore operating as a higher level control? There is a seductive semantic that will play a large role in persuading users that AI will simplify much of the difficulty humans encounter in starting and or completing their musical projects, or as a means of obtaining music at a lower price point for media use. If the use of simple textual descriptors is sufficient to produce a work that sounds good enough for average use or users, then the goal of algorithmic rents and IP protection will be achieved. Perhaps the more important issue is less about whether AI is a good or bad thing, but more about how it shifts power. Finally, some points to consider in developing the Cyborg composer. Domain expertise. The presence and requirement for humans to make sense of all outputs in cultural contexts is paramount, especially as AI is not easily decomposable, not context-aware, and not easily steerable. How to encourage the unexpected. Can humans shift AI towards the development of unintended outcomes rather than imitative music outputs? Are bugs to be encouraged if they result in novel works? What happens when there is a software update and the AI no longer performs the way it did in the previous version, or the company goes out of business? Will we mourn the loss of its mojo? The extent to which we will use AI is a matter of degree. For some practitioners, it may become important that musical solutions to creative problems are derived from their own thinking. For others, it may be a simple matter of a Fordist type of factory automation at a rate of output not previously available to humans. When asked whether AI is creative, David Cope responded in the affirmative, but with a caveat. Creativity is simple. Consciousness, intelligence, those are hard. Thank you.